Yeah. Thanks, Ella. Well, thank you very much, Ella. So it's my honor and a great pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker, David Barrows. Dave Barrows is the Capital Region Director of the Aurora Philosophy Institute in Ottawa. He hails from Beantown, that is to say Boston in the United States, not the real Boston in Lincolnshire. Now, if we could have someone from the real Boston, that would be something. And anyway, Dave was educated at Northeastern University and the University of Western Ontario. Kipling obviously was wrong about that. East and West do meet in the person of Dave. So Dave has had a long and varied career in public service, in academia, and in business. He was Director of Research at the Ontario Ministry of Industry, and he was Associate Director of the MPA, that is the Master of Public Administration program at the Schulich School of Business at York University. At York, he was my colleague, and together we wrote the path-breaking volume, Fundamentals of Economics for Business, which went into a magnificent 2 editions. By the way, Dave, before we get started, we actually received $49.25 US each last year on that book. Yeah, not bad. I've already got mine because I've got other books with it. I've got other books with WSP, but I'm afraid that you're going to have to wait, they tell me, until your total hits $100. So it's something to look forward to anyway. But I think not bad, for a book that's 15 years old, right? That anyone would buy such a thing, I think is quite a miracle. So with no further ado, I welcome David, and you're going to give a talk on existentialism, nihilism, a parable.
Well, thank you, John. I'm Dave Barrows, and I am a dabbler in this business. I am not an expert by any sense of imagination. The things that I have said have probably been said before and said better by other people, but so be it. And I may well be wrong about a lot of stuff. So that you could correct during the subsequent part of the discussion. So let's begin with certain assumptions. We have to assume that this existence is real. I think, therefore, I am actually means something, as opposed to I think, therefore, I am an avatar, a simulation, a video game. Philosophers, I guess, are now dealing with this. I saw an article in the New York Times about a year or 2 ago by a professor of philosophy at Yale, who talked about us being in a simulation and what the philosophical applications are for our existence. So there you go. That modern cosmology has something to say. The universe started with a big bang. The universe started with material and not consciousness, which is interesting, and that existence is based not on a universal intelligence, but mathematics. The problem is the math doesn't work. And in order to make it work, as I understand it, you need an M universe, a multiple set of universes that can never be seen or visited, but they have to exist to make the math work. So current cosmology, as I understand it, violates Occam's razor, which is one of the fundamental principles of science, which is always take the simplest solution. And as I understand Big Bang Theory, it's not so simple. Then there is, of course, the garbage theory of reincarnation, where we somehow continue to be recycled. A planet with 8 billion human beings whose sole purpose appears to be to learn a lesson. These souls recycled indefinitely until they learn the truth that nothing really matters, which I could have told them right now. So humans endure an unending amount of pain and suffering, learn that nothing matters.
I'm sorry, David. The sound quality is very, very.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gee, I've got my microphone and everything. Am I mumbling? Sometimes I mumble. Is this
Oh,
is
well,
this
yeah,
better? Is this better?
a little bit. Let's try this.
Okay, let's try this. So I'm asking then what the purpose is of pain and suffering when we return in an imperfect state.
David,
Yeah,
I think what I hear, I don't know if Henry hears the same thing, is like some kind of almost like a drumming or thumping.
really.
Yes, yes, sounds
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah. So can everyone please mute? Maybe someone had not muted or something like that. Dave, say something now.
Something.
No, it's somewhere at your end.
Oh, it
D- d-
is. Well, let me shut the door to my so-called office. See if that helps.
yeah. Sorry to everyone for this delay, but this is the kind of thing which happens all the time with Zoom.
it's like echo a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, there was an echo. Yeah.
All righty. Is that any better? Is that any better?
A little
No,
bit.
a little bit, but I can still. Have you got any appliances on in the room?
The
Well, other
funny
than
thing, I hear John pretty well, but David isn't. I don't know.
other than my pacemaker, no.
Oh, that could be it.
Oh, shut it off. Oh, okay, you could have shut
No,
it
no, you can't shut up. You can't shut up. Okay, so we're going to give you a break. That's exactly what I'm hearing, Dave. So
Well, you know, wait a minute. Let's. If I take this off, is this any better?
no,
No.
worse.
Right.
No, yeah, okay, so Dave, we'll live with it. We're happy that you're alive.
Well, no, I'm glad somebody is.
So, yeah, so I'm going to mute again. Henry, you mute yourself, and off you go, Dave. Sorry for the interruption. Yeah.
So I don't understand the purpose of all of this. My sister-in-law was schizophrenic. She suffered horribly for 60 years in mental institutions where she was raped and beaten. And I don't understand why. What she learned from this experience, why she experienced this experience, I don't get it. Anyway, what I'm concerned about is the Starship Enterprise, which I don't understand at all. I'm on the Starship Enterprise, and I'm responsible for kosher butchering, and I'm the chief rabbi. And we're out in space, and I die. And then the question becomes, what happens to me? Now, if I'm out in space, I guess the Hindus come up and get me, or the Buddhists. But what about my God? You know, the God of all Israelites. But then it's even worse because I'm in an area which is under contention between the Vulcans and the Klingons. And their gods want a piece of me as well. And so I don't understand where I end up. I don't understand who wins, who loses, but I guess I'll find out eventually. So, Schroeder's cat. Who's looking at me? Am I alive or am I dead? Now, the interesting thing is we know that energy cannot be destroyed, and so something continues on. Now, some of the people, as I understand it, say that's the basis for reincarnation, but it doesn't necessarily mean we have to reincarnate on this planet in this form. Presumably, we could go any place, and as we'll see in a minute, there's a lot of places to go in this universe. So the Christian Islamic doctrines talk about heaven and hell as a possibility. Hebrew theology is ambivalent. As I understand it, the Gomorrah gives 6 alternatives of an afterlife. God is daddy and the tree effect. Timea was a student of mine at the MBA program. She was a model and a dancer, and we got to know each other. And one day she said, you know, Dave, I was abused by my father. And I said, oh, that's not bad. I don't really want to hear too much about that. And she said, no, no, it wasn't sexual. He hit me. And I said, okay, how come? And she said, well, it was pure abuse, pure abuse. And I said, never heard that expression. What is pure abuse? And she said, he hit me for no reason. I couldn't discern why he hit me. I had no idea. And of course, then she couldn't do anything about it, because if you know why you're being hit, you could presumably, hopefully, change your behavior. And so somehow we need some rationale for being hit randomly by this life. The concept then of the day of judgment assumes perfect entities have populated the earth with an exercise of free will, which then leads to a path to heaven and hell. However, we don't come back in pure form. We come back with all the wear and tear that you can imagine. Alternatively, you can have salvation by conversion, but of course, in Judaism, that's really not terribly possible because we don't proselytize. Now, modern biology, psychology is correct with respect to the facts of human nature. The dichotomy between us and them appears to be hardwired, so that that's part of the ancient evolutionary process. Hence the expression, looking for someone with a friendly face. Friendly face meaning, of course, looks like me. Now there's inequality in the world, and then the question becomes, why? Well, you can't eliminate inequality because it's not possible. 1573, it was observed that a fool and his money are soon parted, and the two great American philosophers, W.C. Fields and P.T. Barnum, never give a sucker an even break, great movie, and there's a sucker born every minute. So the numbers don't work. With a Pareto distribution of power law probability, it describes a number of phenomena, social, scientific, geophysical. With respect to the distribution of wealth in society, the trend indicates a large portion of wealth is held by a small fraction of the population. And that's ubiquitous over time and space. That's just what it is. Those are the numbers. This has become known as the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the wealth of the society is owned, as a generalization, by 20% of the population. Now, you can redistribute income, and many countries do that. It's called the Gini coefficient, G-I-N-I. Norway is particularly good at redistributing income, but not redistributing wealth, because the wealth just sorts itself out. Some people are just better at accumulating wealth. And it's not necessarily, as you know, looking around the world, tied into intelligence. So here we are in what is the known universe. So to say that we're infinitesimal is an exaggeration. And so we're just, it's just a speck. You can't even see us in there. But that's Earth in the known universe. Now, the present state of cosmology is that we don't know what happens beyond the known universe. Really, it's a question of whether anything can be detected, and the reference is then to the physical limit created by the speed of light. So just to give you a sense of the magnitude of the place, the Earth in the observable universe is 46.5 billion light years in any direction. Thus, it's 93 billion light years. And 1 light year is a unit length that amounts to 5.88 trillion miles. So we're pretty small in a very big pond, if you believe. any of this stuff. The universe is supposed to be 13.8 billion years of age, started by a material, not by universal intelligence. We may live on average, with my new pacemaker, to 100 years. So therefore, the percentage of time that we exist relative to the known universe is whatever that number is, which to me, I don't know what it means, but I assume it's not very much time, not even a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a second. So what do I conclude from all of this? Unfortunately, I conclude that not only do Black lives don't matter, green lives don't matter, purple lives don't matter, anybody's lives don't matter. We're insignificant with respect to the timing and the size of the known universe, and therefore, that's it. That's all that we can say, or at least that's all that I can say. So again, I apologize. Lots of people have said lots of things about this, and I really don't want to make a botch out of things. We know what existentialism is, how do we deal with meaninglessness, waiting for Godot. We know that nihilist then is trying to say, what do we do either with negative nihilism or with optimistic nihilism? How do we then find our way in a place where there is no reason, no rationale? So what to do? Well, the bourgeois approach is the golden rule, Kant's categorical imperative, which is great as long as you're part of the bourgeoisie. If you're not, then you don't fit into the norm. You're different, and therefore their golden rule doesn't apply to you. So what some have said is the whole of the law is that do thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, or do it out of love. Which sounds great, except it's expressed by at least two very different people. One, of course, is the great beast, 666, Aleister Crowley, who is deemed the wickedest man on earth. He was just a silly post-Victorian upper-class British twit. But he was just more debauched than wicked, but nonetheless, that's Crowley. And another source is St. Augustine. So putting Crowley and St. Augustine in the same sentence really doesn't get you very far, but they both said exactly the same thing. Do as thou wilt, according to what's in your heart. So where do we go from here? Well, one guy was Larry Kohlberg, who was a prof at Harvard, no doubt. And he was trying to think about moral reasoning and moral development. How do we do this? His work, for those who are teachers, comes from Piaget, who is doing first work in education, I guess. And he said there's 6 stages of development in moral reasoning concerned with justice. And so that the idea is what is right, and further to John Cummings' point of view, these need to be universal positions, not moral relativism. He says that morals are not a natural feature of the world, they are prescriptive. But moral judgments can be evaluated in logical terms of truth and falsity. And what you do is you progress, as Piaget talked about with education, from one stage to another, and you cannot skip a stage. And so what happens is you do reasoning till you get to a point where it doesn't work. And then so you say, well, I'm stuck at this phase. I'll need to go someplace else. And so then you keep moving through till you get to higher and higher stages of moral reasoning. So this is Kohlberg's theory. Step one is punishment and obedience. So you avoid the rules in order to avoid punishment. So this is Timia, just tell me what I need to do, and so you won't hit me anymore. Then there's naive hedonism, where it's rewards. That's 4, 5, 6-year-olds. If you brush your teeth, I'll let you whatever. Then it's good boy, bad boy morality. This is, of course, where all the psychosis comes in, where you're constantly bombarded with, if you're good, you do this. If you're bad, you do that. The next is conformity. You don't want to be censored by authorities, so you conform. Bourgeois Kant's categorical imperative works really well here. And then you conform to maintain community rights, and with an emphasis on individual rights. And then, of course, the last step, which is always the step achieved by the people who develop these things, like Kohlberg, is individual principles of consciousness, of conscience. And so here you are post-conventional, presumably beyond 11 years of age, although I don't know how many 11-year-olds have reached that stage. Kohlberg, unfortunately, had to kill himself. He was quite ill, and he walked into the Atlantic Ocean in Winthrop, in Boston, just a few miles away from I used to swim in Revere Beach. Now, Kohlberg then came up with Hesss's dilemma. So a woman's on her deathbed, and there's a drug that could save her. The town dentist, druggist rather, found this drug. He was a scientist as well, I guess. And for the radium that he used, he paid $200, and he wants to charge $2,000. Hesss tries to get the money in legitimate ways, but he can't find it. He asks the druggist for a break, the scientist, who says, no, I'm here to make money. So Hesss got desperate, broke into the man's laboratory to steal the drugs. Should he have done this? Why or why not? When you're teaching MBA students, this is a really nice case study because they don't think along these lines. So you actually get some interesting discussion with some of them. So Kohlberg is interesting. He says his theory is that the justification is what is significant. What stage of moral reasoning were you at that led to this form of behavior? So, for example, in pre-conventional, he should steal the drug because it's only worth $200. And he would be happy to save his wife. However, there were consequences. He'll be put in prison. Prison's a bad place. Conformity. His wife expects it. His wife will benefit. The problem is stealing is bad, and everybody will think that you're a bad person. So that's an issue. Post-conventional is everyone has to choose the right to live. Saving human life is more fundamental than property rights. A lot of people believe that, of course. And then, of course, the scientist has the right to fair compensation. As we schlep our way through this case study, I then say, okay, saving human life is more fundamental. Now the druggist comes in, finds Hesss, they have a fight, and Hesss kills the druggist. What do you think now? You think that's still a fundamental right? Yes, you saved your wife, but you've killed another human being. So that tends to generate some excitement as well. Again, Kohlberg does not give an answer. He just simply wants to know where you are in your moral reasoning. And of course, we could discuss this to infinity in terms of what you guys think. Now, the folks at Oxford, actually, over in England, the anthropologists there just published an article where they believe that there are 7 universal moral rules based upon a survey of 60 cultures from around the world. And here they are: help your family, help your group, return favors, be brave, defer to superiors, divide resources fairly, respect other people's property. Now, of course, what you're seeing is with 60 different cultures, you have many different perspectives: Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Hebrew, etc. But that's what they came up with. If you read the article, there is therefore the justification for warfare. You can justify warfare by helping your family and helping your group and being brave. Now, that may bother some people, but that's where the folks from Oxford are at, for what it's worth. Okay, well, what's it all about? I was teaching at a place called SPJ, the School of Global Management in Sydney, Australia. It was an interesting place, still exists, I guess. Head office was in Mumbai, with campuses in Dubai, Sydney, and Singapore. I met up with these guys when they were bringing people into Toronto to the Schulich School of Business. And the idea of this program was very interesting. You physically attended all campuses. And so the idea was to make you a truly international business person. The majority of people, students, were from India, which was a bit of a problem because they wanted some diversity, but it was what it was. And many of the students were very young. It appears you can graduate, from Indian University at age 20. And they were accepting people who had no experience. So you've got now people who are in their 20s getting an MBA, which is, if you know anything about an MBA, is not the purpose of an MBA. But anyway, that's what happened. So I had an office there, which was all glass, and which did not have a lock on the door. So the students felt entitled, if you will, to come in and sit down and talk right away, unannounced. If I was on the phone, if I was working on my computer, it didn't matter. They would just sit down and talk. I would get upset, and then I think, well, it's a cultural thing or whatever. So why am I going to bother doing this? It would just mess up my student evaluations. So one day a student entered my office unannounced without an appointment, and she just began to talk. And she was quite young, in her early 20s. And of course, the question was the ubiquitous question that profs always get, which is, what should I do with my life? This sort of standard fear for those who teach. So I've been getting this for a long time, and my response has always been the usual approach. I can't take responsibility for these people, God forbid, and tell them what to do. Well, sometimes I'd like to tell them what to do. So I play kind of Socratic, I guess. All right, 10 years from now, describe your life in great detail. Where do you live? Are you married? Do you have children? Is money important to you? What kind of lifestyle do you want? Where and how do you get your joy? This normally elicits a semi-interesting discussion where for the first time, you're not 20 anymore, you're in your 30s. And as happens with Indian students, they've been told who to marry and what to do, in general, not always, of course. So what's it all about? What you going to do? And then I got this, which I never had, which is, I don't know. I want you to tell me how I'm going to get my joy, which is obviously impossible. So I had nothing to build on. I just wasn't going anyplace with this. So obviously I had to get rid of her. And so I said, big responsibility, give me a bit of time, I'll think about it, and we'll get together again. Now it was the middle of the semester, and these people were leaving for Singapore in a few weeks. So I figured I would just ride out the storm and not have to deal with this, and because there was nothing I could do in this context. So I hadn't seen her for a week or two, and I asked one of the students where she was. I couldn't use her name because I couldn't pronounce it, of course. And she said, oh, didn't you hear? We were on an excursion to the Blue Mountains, and she fell off the mountain. Those of you who get to Sydney, Blue Mountain is to the north on the way to the Gold Coast, and it's a very nice trip. It's a very nice mountain. And then, of course, I screamed out, is she dead? I find in these situations, sensitivity, sympathy, sincerity are really important. And I've learned over time that once you learn how to fake sincerity, you've got it made. And so the answer was, no, she survived. Her mother came and took her back to India. So that's that, and off we went. And I'm sitting in my office about a week later, and she walks in. And she sits down, and she begins to talk, as is her wont. And she looked terrible, just completely awful. Major facial damage. Her right arm was in a sling. So she was a mess, honest with you, physically, and quite upsetting. So, are you okay? And then the answer was, it was the most wonderful experience I've ever had. Wonderful experience. Did you land on your head? And she said, no, it was, I didn't do that, thank God. She said, I was walking along thinking about what I should do with my life, and then all of a sudden I slipped and fell off the mountain. For those of you who've been to the Blue Mountain, they don't have any guardrails. It's really quite surprising. And it was wonderful. Falling off the mountain was wonderful. I felt as if I was floating in the air. I never felt so free. Although it wasn't much fun when I hit the ground. They took me to the hospital in an ambulance. I wanted to go back to the residence, but the doctors would not let me go. So I discharged myself. What a wonderful feeling. I never thought I could do such a thing. I'm so proud of myself. Falling off a mountain was the best experience, transformative experience of her life. Who knew? There's an old Indian expression, North American Indian. For those in Canada, they're called First Nations. We made friends with some Indians in Texas, and I said, what do I call you? And he says, well, call us Indians. I said, I can't do that. That's politically incorrect. I said, in Canada, it's First Nations. And they said, that's just political policy. So, a North American Indian expression, which is, without tears, the soul cannot see the rainbow. Without tears, the soul cannot see the rainbow. Which I thought was just pretty neat. So my friends, that's where I'm at. That's what it's all about. And I have now finished with the formal part of the presentation. I'll turn it over to Sean and Ella, I guess. And I'm sure there's lots of discussion. As you can see, I'm rather ill-equipped to answer any questions. If you have any questions for me, I'd be delighted to try and answer, but I don't have much firepower. Henry, please.
Yeah, very good.
No.
I'm not
Henry,
allowed.
no, we haven't started the questions yet. please mute yourself again, Henry. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
See?
So I would like to thank Dave very much for the presentation. That was very interesting. You promised us something, not normal, and you've succeeded magnificently, if I may say so. So now we will, move to the question period. I'm going to stop the recording now.